Good morning and happy Tuesday, everyone. My name is Nick Marro with Occupy Fantasy. As always, I'm here to help you break down tonight's MLB DFS main slates on both DraftKings and FanDuel. If you haven't already, please like the video. Also, subscribe to the channel that helps us get more free content like this out to you. Also, if you're not a member of Occupy Fantasy, check the links in the description below. As a member, you get access to the model you see here, which I'll be using throughout the video. We also have a single lineup builder, multi lineup builder, and a private Discord server full of DFS pros to help you improve your game. For MLB, we also have the daily plug article of which I'm a contributor, where we will highlight our favorite arms bat stacks for each main slate. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Once again, my name is Nick Marro. You can find me on Twitter at Nick Marro DFS. We get a nice 10 game slate tonight. Pretty good size, honestly, for a Tuesday. We've seen some 13 gamers recently, which is just a lot to get through. But I'm going to go through game by game, team by team, talk through my favorite plays. If I think a pitcher is worth rostering, I'll be sure to let you know. If I think a team's worth stacking, we'll pull up the model, go to the batter page, and talk through which bats are worth prioritizing. So, again, 10 gamer tonight. Starting to see the weather heat up across the country, which means we should see more runs, but there are some solid arms on this slate. So, just a reminder too, if you are using the model, make sure you have either DK or FanDuel main slate selected. They are the same slate today, but if you don't do that, you're going to get the 640 games in there, giving you data that you don't need. So be sure to make that change if you are using one of the models. So. All right, let's get right into it now. First game on the slate, we have Kyle Bradish and the Baltimore Orioles taking on Garrett Cole and the New York Yankees. So I believe Bradish has been out for most of this season. Let's see here. Yeah, let me take that back. He's been back and healthy the past couple weeks. He's looked really good his last two times out, which kind of explains the low implied total for the Yankees here. I was thinking of John Means. I always get those two mixed up. But yeah, Bradish has been healthy. So as a result, we're really not seeing the Yankees anywhere toward the top of the model. No surprise there. Whenever we do get them low owned, they are worth considering, just because obviously they have a lot of guys that can hit home runs. So at low ownership, if you do get an outlier game for Bradish where he's struggling, which wouldn't be the most shocking thing in the world, then we could see a big game out of some of these Yankee bats. But I'm really not going to call them our priority at all here. And then on the other side, we have Garrett Cole. Facing off against these Orioles. Orioles showing around a 3 implied run total. Cole, 3.8 xFIP on the season, around a 27% K rate. The Orioles haven't been bad as far as hitting the ball goes, but they do have around a 21% K rate against right-handed pitching. So it's really not the best matchup for Cole. But at the same time, I mean, he does feel pretty safe here. No surprise we're seeing very high ownership on him on both sides. Certainly an arm we're going to be considering today. So I'm going to go ahead and write him down. I don't think Bradish is insane. I just think there are a lot of good arms on this slate, so I don't think we need to really consider him our priority at this time. But that being said, where he's cheap, he does make some sense. I think 7,200 over on DK. For me personally, I don't imagine I get to him. But again, he has looked good over his past couple starts. So yeah, that's enough for me to not want to get the Yankee bats. I will say Garrett Cole looks good here. Not quite as much K upside as Spencer Strider or some of the other arms we have on the slate, but he is obviously a very good arm. So don't be afraid to play some Garrett Cole. If you do eat him or eat his roster spot as chalk, just make sure that you're getting a little bit different with your other spots. You don't want to eat chalk at both pitchers and your stack on DK, or at pitcher and one of your stacks on FanDuel. You need to get a little bit different, even on a 10 game slate if we're seeing ownership concentrated like that. So, really like Garrett Cole there. But let's move into the next game now. We have Yu Darvish and the San Diego Padres taking on Mackenzie Gore and the Washington Nationals. So, Darvish hasn't been bad lately. Going to pull up his statistics here. Obviously, a really nice matchup against the Washington Nationals team that isn't all that great in terms of hitting the ball. They have been a little bit better than expected, but they've been benefiting from some pretty favorable matchups lately. So Darvish has around a 27% K rate, which is similar to Cole's, but this is a much better matchup for him than we're seeing for Garrett Cole because these Nationals, they have just a 129 ISO. That's their projected starting lineup against right-handed pitching, a 289 WOBA, which is very, very low as well, and then around a 21% K rate. So Darvish is another arm I'd be considering here. The issue is he is pretty expensive, so I do like him. I could certainly see getting some share in tournaments. Only 11% on DK, 4% owned over on FanDuel, so he is a solid option there. But tough to call him a priority over guys like Cole and Strider, but he does kind of live in that second tier right after them. So do not sleep on you, Darvish, today. I do have some interest. On the other side, I actually don't think it's insane to consider Mackenzie Gore here. Gore comes into the start with the 3.65 xFIP, which is actually pretty low, 29% K rate, 13% swinging strike rate. And this Padres team just hasn't been good offensively at all. I mean, obviously they have a lot of dangerous bats towards the top of the order and guys like Tatis, Bogart, Soto, etc. But they just really haven't been delivering. So if no one's going to want to play Gore here, I do think he's a little bit overpriced. But 9,300 on DK, 9,400 on FanDuel. If you're playing a ton of lineups, I do think there's some merit to getting to him. And really, it's just because the San Diego team has been cold. I think public perception still rates them as one of the better offenses in the league, and they just haven't been that. And while Gore does give up a lot of power at times, he also has a ton of K upside. So a little bit risky, but I'm going to go ahead and jot down Mackenzie Gore um, as an arm I'd be considering. But I will say he's high risk only, GPP only. Like, yeah, if you're playing a lot of chalky bats, maybe you get to someone like Gore to get different, but he's not a priority by any stretch. So, the two arms here of what we're going to be focusing on, I do like Darvish, I do like Gore. We look at this game total; it's only 8 runs. But yeah, they both pop relatively high in the model. We're seeing Darvish is the fourth ranked arm, Gore is the sixth ranked arm. So, like I said, no one really getting to Gore in a matchup on paper. That's scary. But the Padres have been mostly terrible. So I think in large field tournaments he makes some sense. So more arms for me than bats from that one. Moving into the next game on the slate, we have Bobby Miller and the Los Angeles Dodgers taking on the Atlanta Braves and one Spencer Strider. So let me start with the Miller side. So Miller seems to have some K upside. This is his, I believe, season debut at the major league level. Um, Averages around 1K per inning, but all that being said, he also allows a lot of runs. So we really haven't gotten to any stacks we like much on this slate yet. I will say the Braves are going to be one of them. Just Miller really hasn't shown an ability to get outs at this level yet, and yeah, he's been struggling in AAA. So who's to say he's going to find much success at the major league level? But all that being said, I mean, the Dodgers are really low, or excuse me, the Braves. Where are the Braves here? I thought we'd see them higher up in the model. A little bit. Okay, there they are. Yeah, so they're not really profiling all that well. I think it's because we don't have much data on Miller yet. And if Miller is on a short leash, this could quickly turn into a bullpen game, which would kind of cap their upside. Um, but yeah, I mean, Miller is a righty. I think Olson would be a play worth considering. Murphy, Riley, Rosario still too cheap. Acuna, we saw Rosario hit a home run last night as one of the better value plays on the slate. So I'll pull up Atlanta. I don't think they're a top stack yet. But I think throughout the day we're going to see their ownership climb up. I think we're going to start to see the model kind of warm up to them here as well. So Olson, Acuna, Riley, Harris, Albies, no surprise there. Some of the bats from the left side do look solid here. That team total just below 5 runs. I do expect it to eclipse 5 by the time we get to lock. It's only 10:14 a.m. Eastern Standard Time right now, so we're looking at like a 9-hour period between now and lock. So things could certainly change between now and then. For now, I do like the Braves bats, but they do seem to be getting some love. And unless the model starts to come around, I probably won't get to them too aggressively. On the other side of things, I mean, what needs to be said about Spencer Strider? I mean, the guy has a 3 flat xFIP on the season, one of the best numbers in baseball, 41.5% K rate, ridiculous 20.6% swinging strike rate. So Spencer Strider is as good as it gets. So even in a tough matchup here against the Dodgers, I think Strider is probably the best arm on the board. He's expensive though, so if you're going to get to him, you're going to have to pay down at SP2 on DK, or you're going to have to pay down for some of your bats. There are enough value bats on a 10-game slate to get to him pretty easily. And yeah, I'm hoping maybe ownership comes down a bit because he is facing the Dodgers, but as things stand, he's probably the most popular arm on the slate. Really not surprised by that. I will get my shares here certainly. He's proven to be mostly matchup proof. He did allow a couple of home runs his last time out against the Rangers, but I think that was more of an outlier than anything. One of the best pitchers in baseball, holding both righties and lefties to a sub 270 WOBA this season. So he's done a good job limiting damage and getting those strikeouts. So Strider excellent here. Don't mind Braves bats, but we can move into the next game on the slate now. We have Kodai Senga against Drew Smiley and the Chicago Cubs. Wrigley Field, the one place where the wind really, really does matter. It looks like it is blowing in right now, but not that hard. But this is going to be favorable to the pitchers. We see Senga profiling pretty well here. I think he had a good start last time out. Don't quote me on that. A guy who has the stuff to generate strikeouts, but he's been walking a lot of batters, around a 14% walk rate on the season. Certainly not ideal. But that K rate just shy of 30%. 4.23 xFIP certainly reasonable. And this Cubs team, I mean, they do have some power against righties, but they also strike out nearly 24% of the time. So Senga, another arm I'd be considering. There are a lot of good arms on this slate. If you haven't picked up on that trend yet, and Senga is certainly one of them. Let's go ahead and click over to here. Take a quick look at that game log. I think he had one of his better starts of the year last time out. Yeah, against Tampa Bay, who's obviously a really tough offense. We saw Senga go for 12 Ks, only one earned run on 104 pitches. He's actually gone for seven plus strikeouts in three of his last four outings. So Senga, one of the better tournament arms on the board here. And let me just take a quick look at his ownership. 21% on DK, 12% on FanDuel, so he's getting some love, but it's not like he's super chalky or anything. I like him a lot here. On the other side of things, we have Drew Smiley. Smiley very inconsistent. We've seen some big games out of him. Let's see where the price is at on Smiley. 7,300 on DK is going to be tempting, even against this Mets team. But the issue is the Mets, while they don't hit lefties all that well, they also don't strike out much against lefties. Just an 18% K rate for their projected starters, which isn't really enough for me to want to get to Smiley all that aggressively. Not a crazy play here, especially if the wind continues to blow in Wrigley. This Mets offense has not been as good as expected this season. But yeah, there's just so many good arms on the slate. It's tough to get excited about Smiley. I will say he's at least worth considering in large field tournaments, but not quite quality enough of an option for me to want to write down at this time. But it is going to keep me off of Mets bats for sure. So from that game, we really like Senga. That's really the one priority. Moving into the next game, we have Eduardo Rodriguez and the Detroit Tigers taking on Daniel Lynch and the Kansas City Royals. So Erod did allow a few runs last time out, but he's been outstanding. The same way we just pulled up Senga's game log. Maybe I could pull up Erod here. Yeah, so I mean the price on DK is certainly too cheap. I know he had a bad game last time out against Pittsburgh. That was a day game. Historically, he's been better in night games. I don't know if I want to look too deeply into that, but if you look at his recent results outside of that game, there are reasons to consider that an outlier. So I really like Erod here. On the season, just pulling up his numbers on my other screen, 24.4% K rate, 3.9 xFIP, holding both righties and lefties to a sub 115 ISO, so he's done a good job limiting power. I really like Erod, but he's more of a DK play because over on FanDuel, yeah, he's 10-6, so it's tough not to want to just get up to someone like Garrett Cole or Spencer Strider if you find yourself in that range. But Erod for Detroit's certainly in consideration. I'm just going to write that he's more of a DK play. And I do generally play both sites on a night to night basis, so that allows me to kind of pick my spots. I'll play a bunch of Erod over on DK, probably completely fade him on FanDuel, and not really have any fear of missing out over here because I got my coverage on the other site. But that's a strategy I implore. Unless you consistently play both sites, it's not really something you have to think too deeply on. He's a really good play on DK, not such a great play on FanDuel at the price, but he does have plenty of upside. On the other side of things, we have Daniel Lynch. Really not that great of an arm. I got to dig a little bit deeper into what he's been doing in the minors this season, but I know historically he's allowed a good amount of power to both righties and lefties, except around 5 runs in his major league career. So really not all that interested in Lynch. And what do you know? The Detroit Tigers are profiling as one of the better stacks on the entire slate. So I'm going to go ahead and jot them down here. I actually like them more than the Braves. Obviously, they're a lot cheaper. Um, and yeah, let's talk through some of these bats. So against left-handed pitchers this season, I know Torkelson has been outstanding. We go to the batters page of the model, pull up Detroit, and yeah, Torkelson's kind of middle of the road. Actually, no, we're not sorting by OF index yet. Okay, so Sorting by OF index, Torkelson comes up as the third top play, right behind Baez and Jake Rogers. Rogers 481 ISO against lefties this season. He's probably going to hit ninth, but as far as value goes, he's an excellent option. Really like Rogers, really like Baez, really like Torkelson and Eric Haas as well. That is if they use one of the two catchers as a designated hitter, which I expect they will. But yeah, some ownership going to the Tigers, more popular on FanDuel. It's really just Javier Baez that's getting significantly owned. But this is a very cheap stack. If you want to pay up at pitcher, if you want to double pay up at pitcher on DK, the Tigers are a way to get there. Like, for example, you could probably play Cole, Strider, and get to five Tigers pretty easily. So do not sleep on Detroit this evening. We're actually still waiting for their team total to come out, which is a little bit surprising, but I think they just announced Lynch as a starter earlier this morning, so that's likely the reason. Really like the Detroit Tigers here. They're going to be pretty high owned. Keep an eye on this ownership. Right now, where everyone's single digits on DK, I do consider them one of my favorite contrarian options, but I would not be surprised as that team total comes out, as Vegas adjusts, that we see those percentages climb. So really like Detroit, where they're owned currently, but I do expect to see that ownership climb throughout the day. And then Erod, again, really good on DK, viable on FanDuel, but a little bit overpriced over there. Moving into the next game on the slate, we have JP France and the Houston Astros taking on Colin Rea and the Milwaukee Brewers. So JP France, talented young arm, pretty inconsistent, still developing. Um, and then Ray are really not all that great. But yeah, France 5-4 xFIP, just a 15% K rate. So statistically, he has not been very good. It is a favorable matchup. He is cheap though, and where his swing strike rate is around 10%, I do expect we see that K rate continue to climb. This Brewers offense is certainly dangerous here, but they're expected to roll out a bunch of lefties, and we can't look too deeply into this. But currently, France has reverse splits. He's been much worse to right-handed hitters. So if we see Yelich, Winker, Tellez, Terang, etc., all these lefty bats in here, that could actually benefit France. Um, I don't think he's insane as a value option. Really, not something I can say is a priority. Um, but yeah, good enough that I would consider him in that 7K range. So not rushing to get to him. We have so many arms listed though. I don't know that I can write him down, but not insane. And I'm really not all that interested in Brewers bats. But on the other side of things, we have Colin Rea. Um, 493 xFIP, 200 ISO allowed to righties, 189 to lefties. So we pull up the stack page here, and we see Milwaukee floating around the top five, just outside the top five. Houston right behind them too. So, if anything, I will be interested in bats from this game. A little bit surprised to see Milwaukee profiling better than Houston here. I do expect we see that change throughout the day, but as things stand currently, yeah, I think we can jot both these teams down as stacks to consider. Really not going to prioritize either. Like I said, I think France is going to be a little bit better than his numbers have shown, especially if he's getting a lefty heavy lineup here. But the Astros, I mean, Astros. They're going to be worth considering. So I'm not crazy about the Brewers. I'm just trying to put these in order of how I like them. But yeah, I think the Brewers are okay. I really do like some Astros bats here, though. And I mean, if we do go over to the batter model, pull them up, it's probably going to be the usual suspects that we see. Yeah, Alvarez coming off a two home run game, obviously outstanding anywhere you can afford him. Kyle Tucker, another really strong play from the left side. Altuve, Bregman, Pena. Those top five bats are just outstanding. So see the team total climbing over 5 runs. I do expect they do continue to climb in the model throughout the day. So Houston Astros, a stack I'm going to be considering here. The Brewers actually show well in the model, but I'm not entirely sold on them yet. If those numbers hold throughout the day, I'll probably get some more exposure there. So moving into the next game on the board now, we have the San Francisco Giants with Alex Cobb on the mound facing off against the Minnesota Twins and Sonny Gray. So jumping back over to the pitcher slide, we see Gray as the third ranked OF index arm on the board. No real surprise there. Alex Cobb, pretty high up there as well, floating around 7 or 8. So yeah, let's start on Sonny Gray. Really do like him here. 357 x up on the season, just shy of a 30% K rate, 12.5% swinging strike rate. And this Giants offense, their projected starters, have a 25% K rate against right-handed pitching this season. So Sonny Gray is one of those arms I'm going to be considering for sure, especially in tournaments. Getting a lot of love, but not as much love as Kohler Strider. So you are getting a bit of an ownership discount and a price discount off those other top arms. So Gray, one of the better arms on the slate here. I like him a lot, especially at reasonable ownership. On the other side of things, Alex Cobb, not known as a strikeout pitcher, just a 20% K rate, 8% swinging strike rate, but he does a good job limiting damage, holding both righties and lefties to a sub 140 ISO this season, both righties and lefties to a sub 325 WOBA as well, and he's cheap. So Alex Cobb, 8,300 over on DK, 9K over on FanDuel. I don't mind him here. Kind of more of a floor play though, so I'll make that note for myself here, but. Someone you could consider. Um, the Twins do have power against right-handed pitching, showing a 206 ISO. Their projected starters are, but also a 28.2% K rate against righties for the projected starting lineup. It's Gallo, Correa, Krylov, Buxton, Julian, etc. So yeah, I do like Cobb here at his price. Just more K upside than we're going to see for him than usual, and he's super affordable on both sides. So, not all that interested in bats from this game. Just an 8 total, according to Vegas, as things currently stand. So yeah, definitely like Sonny Gray. Also would consider Alex Cobb in large field tournaments. But that brings us to our next game where bats are certainly going to be worth considering. We have Yuri Perez and the Miami Marlins in cores taking on Austin Gomber and the Colorado Rockies. So first things first, Yuri Perez is a very talented young arm. I don't want that to be overshadowed here. 309 xFIP, 33% K rate, 12.7% swinging strike rate through his first, I think, 3 starts at the major league level. He's dealing with cores today, but he's taking on a team in the Rockies who are fairly mediocre, even at home. Just a 132 ISO against right-handed pitching, 22% K rate. So yeah, do I want to play Perez here? Probably not. Just trying to look at his price. 7,100 on DK, 8,100 over on FanDuel. I don't think it's insane if you want to get to him. The model certainly doesn't like him. Obviously, it's Coors Field. You're looking at a team with a greater than 5 implied run total, so there's plenty of reasons not to like him. But the ownership and the K upside are maybe enough for me to consider him as an SP2. Where you're only playing one pitcher on FanDuel, I don't think he's necessary. We have other arms in that range that are going to be safer. Senga, Cobb, Gore. But Perez does have the stuff. He is a quality arm, and he is facing a pretty aggressive offense that, if they're not making contact, could strike out a bunch here. So Perez, I don't know that I'm going to get to him, but he is talented enough that I probably won't get to Rocky's bats very much. And I mean, if we check the stack model, I will say the Rockies do look decent here, fourth ranked in terms of OF index, sixth in team total. So they're a team you probably want to consider. For me personally, I mean, I always trust the model. They're outside of that top three, though. There's just enough other quality options that I don't think I have to chase Colorado. But if their ownership comes down, they are one of the higher owned stacks on the slate. They are going to have merit in tournaments. But for me personally, I think Perez is talented enough to maybe shy away from Rocky's bats today, even in cores. And I know that could come back to bite me, but that's just how I feel currently. On the other side of things, though, certainly going to be interested in these Miami bats. We see them rank as the top OF index stack on the slate. Austin Gomber, 569 xFIP on the season, allowing a 343 to lefties, 232 ISO to righties. So don't discriminate. Both righties and lefties are going to look good here. I think we're going to see a very righty heavy lineup. So Jorge Soler, 719 ISO against left-handed pitching so far this season. That is not sustainable. That's absolutely ridiculous. But if you're going to bet anyone to homer on this slate today, I think Soler's the guy. You probably have to consider. Not even sorting by team right now. Soler Pops is the best bat on the entire slate. Love him everywhere. Certainly worth considering. Going to be popular, but he probably should be. Reasonably priced on both sides as well. Assuming Yuli Gurriel makes the lineup, he's going to look good here. De La Cruz and Cooper both power threats. Nick Fortes, if he makes the lineup, looks really good. Garrett Hampson against his former team actually has a greater than 200 ISO against lefties so far this season. So the Marlins, they're going to be popular. It's kind of unavoidable, though. I mean, they're outstanding. I would just make sure you mix in some of the bottom of this order. Guys like Burdick, Hampson, Segura do have enough pop to consider. Fortes is going to be one of the lower owned plays there as well. That's one way to get different if you're stacking Marlins. The other way is to make sure that you're using lower owned one offs or a lower owned secondary stack on FanDuel or just lower owned arms in general. But all this to be said, I do really like the Marlins here against Gomber. And I'm going to just make a note here that this is Lynch, this is Rhea, this is Miller. Yeah, so just so when I talk through these at the end, I know who our stacks are facing. But yes, I love the Marlins here. Highest implied total on the slate, over 6 runs. Carver's just not a great arm, so no surprise there at all. On the other side, the Rockies look okay, but so does Perez, so pretty neutral on that side of things. So let's move into the next game now. Just a couple left. Thanks again, everyone, for tuning in. We got Brian Bello. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, in the Red Sox against Griffin Canning and the Angels. So Bello, while I can't really pronounce his name perfectly, he is a very talented young arm. I'll give him his credit. He has a 4 xFIP, around a 24% K rate on the season, 12% swinging strike rate. Very, very cheap on DK at 6,300. Model doesn't love him. It seems the field doesn't really love him. And it's a tough matchup against the Angels. Obviously, you got to navigate around Trout, Otani, Renfroe, etc. But they have a 27% K rate against righties this season. That's their projected starters. So for me, Bello isn't a crazy play. This is kind of a guy I wouldn't tell others to play, but I'll end up playing. And I know sometimes those guys work out. I think it was Brandon Belak, the last video I had on Friday. The numbers really weren't there for him. The model really didn't like him, but he had an outstanding game because he was in a good matchup against Oakland. For Bello today, we're not really getting that great matchup against Oakland, but I do like his stuff, and this is an Angel team that strikes out a lot. So off that alone, I'd consider him, but he's very high risk, and I'll write that down. Very high risk for Brian Bello here. Obviously, the Angels bats do have some upside, especially the top of the order if you can afford them. We see them profiling relatively well in the model, so this is the type of play. I'll have some shares of Bello, but I'd also have some shares of Angels Bass as well. Um, it's just really a boomer bust type spot, so it makes sense to have both sides. Obviously, not in the same lineup. On the other side of things, we got Griffin Canning and his 5.19 xFIP, allowing a 200 ISO to righties, 193 to lefties against this Red Sox offense. And Boston profiling as our second best stack on the slate, second ranked in OF Index, ISO, and WOBA, eighth in team total, which hopefully keeps their ownership down. But I really do like the Red Sox a lot here against Canning. Um, yeah, so we show Verdugo with a greater than 200 ISO, Yoshida, Devers, Duran, all greater than a 200 ISO against right-handed pitching. And no surprise there. Devers, Yoshida, Valdez, Turner, Verdugo, Duran all look pretty well in terms of OF index. So yeah, Red Sox, another team I'll be considering here. If you eat the chalk on guys like Devers, Yoshida, maybe mix in some of the lower owned options like a Verdugo. Surprised he's so low as the leadoff hitter. And yeah, Duran's been outstanding lately. So lots of Red Sox bats to like. One of the best stacks on the slate. Really no denying that. And the Angels are in play, but I think Bello is as well on the other side of things. So we can move into the last game on the board now. Out on the West Coast, we got Luis Medina and the Oakland Athletics taking on Marco Gonzalez and the Seattle Mariners. Marco Gonzalez, 5x FIP, allowing a 200 ISO to right-handed hitters. Oakland, don't think we're going to see them popping in the model, but they do have some decent one-offs here. Uh, Rooker, for example, 364 ISO against righties this season. Laureano, 270. Aguilar, 270. Not a team I'm usually looking to use 5-man stacks from, but against Gonzalez, they do have enough righty power, namely 1 through 4 in that order: Ruiz, Rooker, Laureano, Aguilar. That you could probably get to them as a secondary option, or use one-offs, guys like Rooker, Laureano, very, very cheap Jesus Aguilar, but we can't really call them a stack we're prioritizing. But I am certainly not interested in Marco Gonzalez. On the other side of things, we have Medina, who's actually been decent. He's on a pretty short leash, though. Um, it says he's been unlucky, but his BABIP's actually really low, so I don't know that I buy into the 3.9 xFIP. He allows a lot of power. He has some K upside here, but at the same time, really not all that interested in Medina. I'd rather get to some Seattle bats, and they do actually look pretty well as far as stacks are going on this slate. Number one ranked in WOBA, number two in terms of team total. So I'm going to go ahead and add the Mariners. We got Canning, Mariners against Medina. So yeah, if we hop over to the batters page, we can see which bats we're going to be prioritizing, and I don't think there's any surprises. Julio Rodriguez, obviously one of the better hitters in baseball. Jared Kelenic homered last night. He looks excellent again here. Cal Raleigh, Teoscar Hernandez, Ty France, etc. Really, this entire lineup has power potential. Team total over 6 runs. One of the best stacks on the board. Really, really like Seattle. Just make sure you're not eating too much chalk at other positions if you do go with these guys here. So, really like Seattle. Don't mind a few Oakland one-offs. No pitchers I'm really considering at all from this game. All right, so let's go over the slate now. Just kind of summarize everything I wrote down. So as far as top pitchers go, there's kind of a top tier here with Spencer Strider and Garrett Cole. I like both. I think Cole might be a little bit safer in his matchup, but Strider has the higher ceiling. The 40% K rate's unmatched on this slate. Those are your two best arms. If you can afford them, feel free, but you're gonna have to pay for a very cheap stack, something like the Tigers, for example. But we also have other good arms here in guys like Sonny Gray, Yu Darvish, Senga, Erod, who's much better on DK, Alex Cobb, not a very high ceiling, but a solid floor play. He's cheap. And then a couple high risk options I'll be considering are Mackenzie Gore and Bello for the Red Sox. Both boom or bust high risk options, though. So only use those guys in large field tournaments. But for a 10 game slate, I mean, there's almost 10 arms I think are actually quality. So a pretty strong pitching slate overall. As far as stacks go, we got the Marlins against Garber and Coors, the Red Sox against Canning, Mariners against Medina, who we just talked through. The Detroit Tigers against Daniel Lynch, who are going to be very cheap. Other stacks that I'd consider the Astros against Rhea, Angels against Bello. In lineups, you're not playing Bello, obviously. And then the Braves here against Miller making his debut for the Dodgers. And while I do actually think JP France is a decent arm, the model really does like the Brewers, so I do want to bring them up here as well. So overall, really fun slate, a lot of quality arms to choose from. It doesn't look like we're going to have any major weather issues to worry about either, which is always nice. Definitely keep an eye on the model throughout the day. Please like the video. Also subscribe to the channel. Helps us get more free content like this out to you. Follow me on Twitter at Nick Marro DFS. Check the links in the description below to sign up to Occupy Fantasy today. Let's have some fun tonight, everyone, on this 10 game slate and make some money. Take care and good luck.